Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Young and the Restless channel. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and hit like for more daily drama updates and spoilers. Your support truly means a lot and helps our channel grow every day. Now let's jump straight into today's exciting update. Young and the Restless fans have watched Victor Newman cross line after line for so long that it now feels as though nearly all of Genoa City has a reason to want him brought to justice. The powerful Newman patriarch has built his empire through manipulation, intimidation, and ruthless ambition, but the damage left in his wake is becoming impossible to ignore. Even members of his own family have started recognizing that Victor's relentless pursuit of control has spiraled into something far darker than simple determination. Most of them remain too frightened to openly challenge him, knowing exactly how merciless he can be toward anyone who stands in his way. Victoria Newman, as always, continues standing firmly beside her father, refusing to believe, or perhaps refusing to admit, that he has gone too far. Yet everyone else can see the truth unfolding before their eyes, and for the first time in a long while, it seems as though Victor may soon find himself surrounded by enemies coming from every direction. The walls that once protected him are beginning to crack, and this time some of the terrible choices he has made may finally force him to face consequences he has spent years avoiding. That growing storm became impossible to ignore this week when Kyle Abbott marched straight to the Newman Ranch with one purpose burning in his mind: to confront Victor face to face. There was no hesitation in Kyle's steps as he demanded to know whether Victor had heard what happened to Jack Abbott. Instead of showing even the slightest hint of sympathy, Victor answered with his trademark arrogance, sarcastically insisting that he hadn't forced Jack to sleep with Patty Williams and therefore refused to accept responsibility for the marital chaos that followed. His dismissive attitude only fueled Kyle's anger even further. Kyle quickly reminded Victor that Jack and Diane Jenkins were actually stronger than ever now, before turning the conversation back on him with a cutting question about the state of Victor's own marriage. The moment landed like a direct blow, exposing the hypocrisy Victor so often hides behind, but instead of reflecting on his actions, he simply doubled down on his denials, refusing to acknowledge any role in the destruction he had helped create. Victor continued insisting that none of the blame belonged to him, repeatedly asking what possible connection he had to the entire ordeal. Kyle refused to let him rewrite history. He reminded Victor that it was Victor himself who had brought Patty back to Genoa City, setting into motion a chain of horrifying events that nearly destroyed multiple lives. Victor's expression quickly hardened as he warned Kyle that he was dangerously close to overstepping his boundaries, even threatening to have him thrown off the property if he continued pushing. But Kyle refused to be intimidated. Looking Victor directly in the eyes, he vowed that he would make sure Victor eventually paid for everything he had done to Jack and Diane. Rather than taking the warning seriously, Victor simply laughed off Kyle's promise, mocking him as though he were nothing more than another naive Abbott destined to fail. With absolute confidence, Victor reminded Kyle that countless people had spent years trying to bring him down, and every single one of them had failed. In Victor's mind, Kyle's threats were no different from all the others, empty words that would never amount to anything. What made the exchange so chilling wasn't simply Victor's confidence, but his complete lack of remorse. Jack had been stabbed and left fighting for his life. Diane had endured the terror of being kidnapped by Patty. Families had been shattered, trust destroyed, and lives permanently scarred, yet Victor didn't appear shaken in the slightest. There wasn't even a flicker of regret crossing his face. Watching him remain so emotionally detached after causing such devastation only reinforced what so many people in Genoa City already believed: that Victor Newman had become convinced he was untouchable, and unless someone finally forced accountability upon him, he would never stop. Still, there are finally a few warning signs suggesting that Victor's streak of escaping justice may not last forever. Even though longtime viewers know the odds often favor Victor walking away without lasting punishment, the growing number of people aligning against him could begin shifting the balance. At the very top of that list stands Kyle Abbott, whose determination has evolved from anger into something far more focused. Earlier this week, Kyle shared his frustrations with Billy Abbott, admitting just how impossible it always seems to be to land a meaningful blow against Victor. Billy summed it up perfectly, observing that Victor is always the biggest target in the room, yet somehow everyone always manages to miss him. Kyle wasn't willing to accept that outcome anymore. He promised Billy that this time would be different, even though he confessed he didn't yet have a concrete strategy beyond confronting Victor, a confrontation that accomplished little more than leaving Kyle even more frustrated with the Newman patriarch's smug confidence. That frustration eventually pushed Kyle toward a far more dangerous and potentially game-changing decision. He made his way to the GCPD to visit Patty Williams inside her jail cell, knowing that she might hold the key to finally exposing Victor's role in everything that had happened. Young and the Restless spoilers revealed that Kyle approaches Patty with a deal, and under the circumstances, it may prove incredibly tempting. Patty's recent court appearance ended in complete disaster after she created a scene inside the courtroom, was forcibly removed, and had bail denied. To make matters even worse, Dr. Lawrence Markham, the man who once seemed to stand beside her, has completely abandoned her, disappearing from her life when she needed support the most. Isolated, frightened, and facing an uncertain future behind bars, Patty may finally be vulnerable enough to consider turning against the very man who manipulated her from the beginning. Kyle's proposal could be exactly the lifeline Patty has been desperately searching for. If he convinces her that the Abbott family is willing to help, Patty may decide to tell investigators everything she knows about Victor's involvement. She could reveal that Victor hired her to kidnap Jack, assault him, and destroy his marriage to Diane. She may also claim that Victor orchestrated Diane's kidnapping and encouraged the escalating violence that nearly cost Jack his life. Some of those accusations are undeniably true, while others may depend entirely on Patty's own interpretation of events, but together they would paint a devastating picture for law enforcement. In exchange for her cooperation, Kyle could offer to secure competent legal representation, perhaps even convincing Michael Baldwin to take her case instead of leaving her with the ineffective public defender currently representing her. He might even promise to help Patty receive treatment in a psychiatric hospital rather than spending years locked away inside a state prison, giving her hope that redemption, however small, is still possible. As Kyle weighs just how much he is willing to promise Patty in exchange for the truth, another critical detail hangs over the entire situation like a ticking clock. Victor didn't simply manipulate Patty with empty words. He allegedly handed her an entire bag filled with cash to tear Jack and Diane's marriage apart. If Patty still has any of that money hidden away, it could become the physical evidence investigators have desperately needed. Financial records can be traced, cash payments can be connected, and once detectives begin following that trail, Victor's carefully constructed denials may start collapsing one piece at a time. More importantly, Patty has never truly been loyal to Victor. Their relationship has always been built on mutual resentment and convenience rather than trust, and considering that Patty once tried to kill Victor years ago, there is every reason to believe she would gladly sacrifice him now if it meant saving herself. For someone who already feels abandoned and betrayed by everyone around her, exposing Victor could suddenly seem like the only move she has left. But as that possibility grows stronger, Billy Abbott may soon become another powerful ally in Kyle's mission. His motivation will only intensify once he discovers that Victor has quietly shifted his attention toward another target, Sally Spectra and her fashion company. The truth begins surfacing after Sally overhears Adam Newman and Chelsea Lawson discussing Victor's latest scheme, leaving her horrified to realize that Spectra has become the next casualty in Victor's relentless campaign. The news spreads quickly, and once Billy learns that Victor intends to destroy Sally's business simply to strike another blow against him, his frustration threatens to boil over. This is no longer just another Newman versus Abbott rivalry. Victor is once again using innocent people as collateral damage in a deeply personal war, and Billy is unlikely to sit back while someone he cares about pays the price for Victor's obsession. Every new revelation only adds another enemy to the growing list of people determined to stop the Newman patriarch before he causes even more destruction. Victor's ruthless campaign against Spectra officially begins this week, placing Sally in the center of a battle she never asked to fight. Chelsea quickly realizes exactly how dangerous Victor's plan could become and may push Adam to stand beside her against his own father. Adam has already made it clear that he hates the idea of Victor targeting Sally's company, especially now that Sally is pregnant. The possibility that overwhelming stress could threaten her pregnancy weighs heavily on Adam's conscience, making this far more personal than another business conflict. Victor, however, refuses to acknowledge any of those concerns. Instead, he insists that everything ultimately revolves around Billy and argues that Sally's company is simply another battlefield in his ongoing war. Chelsea doesn't accept that justification for a second. To her, Victor's excuses cannot erase the innocent lives caught in the crossfire, and she has no intention of quietly allowing him to continue. Chelsea's growing determination may become the very push Adam needs to finally stand up to his father. Although Adam has never had much trouble targeting Billy when Victor demanded it, Chelsea has repeatedly challenged him to think beyond blind loyalty. She sees absolutely no reason to let Victor destroy Billy or Sally simply because he believes he has the power to do so. That conviction becomes even stronger after Chelsea personally assures Sally that neither she nor Adam intends to support Victor's latest scheme. Sally, however, responds with painful honesty, reminding Chelsea that Adam has a long history of defying Victor only to eventually fall back into line whenever his father tightens the pressure. It is a brutal truth, one that Adam cannot easily dismiss because deep down he knows she is right, yet those words may finally become the wake-up call he needs. Instead of repeating old patterns, Adam could choose to stand beside Chelsea, risking Victor's wrath in order to protect Sally, her unborn child, and the future they all hope to preserve. Meanwhile, Jack Abbott and Diane Jenkins remain haunted by everything Victor set into motion. Although Jack carries lingering guilt over the role he played in Patty's emotional collapse years ago, he also knows that nothing from the past justifies the horrors that followed. He was kidnapped, drugged, assaulted, stabbed, and left fighting for his life, while Diane endured the terror of becoming Patty's captive as Victor watched his revenge unfold from the shadows. Those memories are still painfully fresh, and neither Jack nor Diane has any intention of letting Victor simply move on without paying for what he has done. Now that they have found their way back to each other and emerged from the nightmare with their marriage stronger than ever, they have something worth protecting. Once Jack fully recovers and finally leaves the hospital, the reunited couple may begin planning a response of their own. Rather than remaining victims, they could become active participants in the growing effort to bring Victor's empire crashing down. The movement against Victor may become even stronger if the people closest to him finally refuse to stay silent. Abby Newman is unlikely to react kindly when she learns that Victor's actions nearly cost her Uncle Jack his life, and Summer Newman may be equally horrified by the truth once every detail comes to light. Kyle has already confronted Nikki Newman and Victoria Newman with the devastating reality that Patty nearly murdered both of his parents. Victoria immediately slipped into familiar territory, refusing to believe her father could have played such a significant role despite the mounting evidence. Nikki's reaction, however, may prove far more complicated. Before long, both women are expected to visit Jack in the hospital, where he will almost certainly repeat everything Kyle has already told them. Hearing those accusations directly from the man who survived Victor's latest scheme could make denying the truth far more difficult than it has been in the past. Ironically, all of this unfolds just as Young and the Restless spoilers reveal that Nikki and Victor agree to give their marriage a fresh start. That hopeful promise comes only after Victor accuses Nikki of betraying him, most likely because she chose to visit Jack despite Victor's repeated demands that she cut Jack completely out of her life. Once again, Victor attempts to manipulate the narrative, turning Nikki's compassion into an act of disloyalty while refusing to acknowledge his own actions. He continues gaslighting her, insisting that Patty acted entirely on her own and denying any involvement despite the overwhelming suspicions surrounding him. Nikki has fallen into this pattern before, defending Victor, excusing his behavior, and convincing herself that everyone else must be mistaken. To be fair, Nikki's judgment has recently been clouded by her own serious medical crisis, leaving her emotionally vulnerable at the worst possible time. Even so, if Patty ultimately decides to expose Victor and Christine Williams-Romolati arrives with enough evidence to place him under arrest, Victor's endless denials may finally lose all power. Additional Young and the Restless spoilers suggest that Victor and Nikki's marriage still has many difficult tests ahead, and this could easily become the greatest challenge they have ever faced together. If Victor is formally charged for orchestrating Patty's crimes against Jack and Diane, Nikki may discover that she can no longer look the other way. There comes a point where loyalty can no longer outweigh conscience, and Victor's actions may finally push her beyond that limit. Should Patty cooperate with authorities and Christine move forward with an arrest, the carefully maintained image Victor has protected for years could begin crumbling in spectacular fashion. It would mark the first truly meaningful consequence for a man who has escaped accountability time and time again, despite leaving devastation wherever he goes. For Kyle, Jack, Diane, Billy, Sally, Adam, Chelsea, and everyone else who has suffered because of Victor's ruthless choices, that moment would represent more than revenge. It would be long overdue justice. Of course, longtime viewers know better than to celebrate too soon. As long as Josh Griffith remains steering the story, there is always the lingering possibility that Victor somehow slips through the cracks once again, walking away untouched, even if handcuffs briefly find their way onto his wrists. Even so, hope continues to grow that this time the revenge train Kyle set into motion will not lose momentum, and that for once, Victor Newman will finally be forced to answer for every painful choice that brought him to this moment.